There's nothing like taking a story and really seeing that data come to life. So let's see this in action by recreating a Form 1040 Schedule 1, Schedule C, and Schedule SE. To do that, we need to meet Maria. So Maria decided to recreate her tax-ready books using QuickBooks Self-Employed. She's already prepared her Schedule C, and she's super excited because she used this class to really understand how to categorize her income and her expenses and to truly understand her money in and her money out. But what she needs to do now is to create her Schedule C tax return. She knows she's a personal tax filer, so she's going to file a Form 1040, and she's going to attach the Schedule C, the Schedule SE for her sole proprietorship income and expenses, and she's also going to attach the Schedule 1, which is going to give her some other deductions. Now, she's had a conversation with a really good friend of hers that's also a tax professional, and she feels super confident to go ahead and prepare the return on her own this year. Next year, she's definitely going to use her friend, but this year she wants to take this on for herself, especially now that she's taken this class and she can take it one step at a time. So let's go and see what she's learned. So the first thing she's going to do is she's going to go to the IRS website by just searching IRS 1040. And then she's going to go ahead and take a look at the 1040 because she understands after the conversation with her friend that's a tax professional that she should be completing a few really important forms. That's the IRS 1040, which is the personal income tax return. And now she understands that since she only had Schedule C, which was her sole proprietorship income last year, she's going to have actually numbers coming through other schedules. So one of those schedules is going to be Schedule 1, line 9. And we'll take a look at that. From there, she's going to also notice that there's other items or lines on different schedules that she needs to be aware of. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the different forms. But more importantly, she is also going to make sure that everything is flowing in the right place. It all eventually flows to the beginning of this tax return. So let's see how that all works. So Maria has pulled up the forms that she was explained by her friend. She pulled up the Form 1040. She pulled up the form Schedule 1 of the Form 1040, Additional Income and Adjustments to Income. She's pulled up the Schedule C, Form 1040, Profit or Loss from Business Sole Proprietorship. And she's pulled up the Schedule SC, Form 1040, Self-Employment Tax. What she wants to do is she wants to learn on her own what her friend, the tax professional, was explaining to her, that everything flows back to the Form 1040, page 1. So the way she understood it was that if she starts at the Form 1040, she's going to see a line, which is line 7, Other Income from Schedule 1, line 9. When she goes to Schedule 1, line 9, she's going to see that that's actually a total line. But what is it totaling? It's actually totaling additional income. That additional income is essentially part 1 of additional income Schedule 1. But what she wants to make sure she has a number on is line 3, business income or loss, attached Schedule C. So attached Schedule C is what she's looking for because the Schedule C is the sole proprietorship profit or loss from business. Now this is starting to ring a bell. That Schedule C, profit or loss from business, rings a bell. The reason is she remembers when she was in QuickBooks Self-Employed and when she did that training on reports and looked at the profit and loss for last year, which was the year that she created the data, it also said profit and loss. And she remembers that essentially this is being built out so that way she can populate her Schedule C. So this makes perfect sense to her. So she's looking at her Schedule C and she's seeing that it's pretty straightforward. The first part on top is really just descriptive information. She personally uses her Social Security number, but she is going to go ahead and get an EIN number, which is an employer identification number. So that way she can go ahead and get a business bank account. But for now, she's been using a social security number. She understands the options that she needs to choose here in the descriptive information. Most importantly, she had a question about, did you make any payments in 2019 that would require you to file Form 1099, which is item I. What that is basically asking is that even though she is a sole proprietor herself, Maria, she may have hired some contractors to help her on some work. If she did hire contractors and she was required to file a 1099 for those payments to those contractors, she would check yes. And she'd also check that she fulfilled her requirements by filing them. And that's what it's asking on question I and J. So she keeps going and she keeps reading each one of these lines. She understands that she has gross receipts. And then she also sees some really familiar line items like gross profit, all the different expenses that she can take as taxable deductions. And then ultimately line 31 is where she is going to report her net profit or loss. Now, what's really exciting is that even though there's no numbers on this form, she is starting to recognize that it looks a lot like her numbers in her QuickBooks Self-Employed. So she's making the connection in regards to being able to see those numbers from QuickBooks Self-Employed onto her Schedule C. The last thing she wants to take a look at is Schedule SE. So Schedule SE is essentially the self-employment tax schedule where she is going to go ahead and report her net profit. Again, that's from the Schedule C. Right here you see it, line 2 is net profit from Schedule C, line 31. And she's going to report that amount. There's a calculation that gets done, which essentially multiplies that number by 92.35. And then she's going to get the amount she should have paid in self-employment tax. Now remember, she may have already paid some self-employment tax. So in this case, she's trying to reconcile what she's paid so far versus what she ultimately owed for last year. One last thing to remember, as a self-employed individual, you can deduct 1/2 of your self-employment tax back on Schedule 1, and you can see it right here. It says enter the result here on Schedule 1. Now, when she's trying to work backwards to her Form 1040, she's realizing that the forms actually tell you where to enter the results. In this case, it's telling you to enter the results on Schedule 1. If I go to Schedule C, this is also telling me to enter my results on Schedule 1. If I go to my Schedule 1 and I go ahead and go, for instance, to my line 9, this is telling me to enter the results on Form 1040. If I go to my deductible part of my self-employment tax, that's telling me to attach a Schedule E. So do you see, if you just read the lines, it's actually not only helping you with the calculation, it's also guiding you to where you eventually want to put that number. So for instance, when you're done with all your adjustments to income, which is part 2 of the Schedule 1, it's telling you to enter here and also on Form 1040. Let's go back to the 1040. If we come back to the 1040 now and read these lines, we're going to realize that several of these lines are actually coming from another schedule. The reason why we know that is because if we read a line, let's say, for instance, we read line 7, it says it's coming from Schedule 1. If we look at line 6, it says it's coming from, it's saying attached Schedule D, so it's coming from Schedule D. So what's really important to know is that when you're doing your Form 1040, and if you have any additional schedules or attachments, essentially what the software is doing, because you're really doing this all through a tax software, or your tax professional is doing it through a software, even though they're completing different forms like the Schedule C or the Schedule SE, or even the Schedule 1, it all ends up on the Form 1040. And that's how you prepare a 1040 with the attachments Schedule 1, Schedule C, and Schedule SE.